They've done it! They've made a great game even greater. So I've been playing Hades 2 lately, and the game's pretty good. Pretty damn good. This will cover first impressions, the game is still in early access after all, but it does have a lot of stuff in it. This will also have some spoilers, so please don't cry if you didn't know Hades was a character in this game. Alright, there's honestly so much praise I want to give to this game, I don't even know where to start. The game is built on every quality of the original and made it better. The combat, the art, the writing, and the music, man. Do I even need to tell you that it's good? Come on now, listen to this. I was very curious about how they were going to revamp the weapons, and they got very creative. In the first game, weapons were rather traditional. You had the sword, the spear, the shield, the fists, the bow, and best of all, the gun. Now you got a staff, an axe, dual blades, torches that look like pom-poms, kinda. And most importantly, you can lob explosive skulls at your enemies, because this is a good game. The biggest difference compared to the previous combat system lies in the fact that you can cast magic and channel your attacks to empower your moves. This will cost you mana, which in return, if you spend enough of it, will let you use even more powerful unique spells that you will gather during your runs. As a result, there are far more options than before, and it's incredibly fun. The dash can now be extended into a sprint, which is definitely useful in large open areas or when you need to escape from enemy projectiles or massive AoEs. Another addition is that instead of being a projectile, your cast creates this circle on the ground that will entangle your enemies and, if you focus it, also cause damage. The boons you acquire from the many brand new and returning gods of Olympus all have unique properties and synergies that can always find some use one way or another depending on your weapon aspect. What's also quite remarkable is how the theme of every god is adequately implemented. Some of them are more obvious than others, but they all correspond to who they belong to. Hephaestus, as you would expect, hits about as hard as a hammer on an anvil, and most of his boons work around this idea. Hera, being the goddess of marriage, will allow you to link enemies, so that the damage that you deal is shared between them, etc. Even older boons got completely reworked, so they can interact with a new moveset and mana system. One last thing to spice things up is that all boons are assigned to one out of 4 main elements, and a handful of boons will grow more powerful depending on how many units of each element you have. There's also this channel mechanic, which will reduce your maximum mana to deal extra damage, gain some armor, or instantly regenerate your mana once you deplete it, among other things. It's another very interesting way to change how you approach the fights, because you always need to be very aware of how much mana you have to focus your magic. In addition to this, some boons will favor you for being low on mana, while others will give you bonuses for consuming a certain amount, or being at maximum. Again, lots of diversity here. Of course, keepsakes are back, and you can now bring familiars with you to give you minor benefits in battle. All in all, this seems like a lot to take in, but honestly none of the new elements seems irrelevant. And even story-wise, you can quickly piece everything together, regardless of whether or not you played the first game. I also love how, just like in the first game, characters have their own volition. It's particularly true for Melinoe, the one that you play as, who starts off with a visible lack of confidence given the impossible task that she's faced with. And as you advance through the story and get more experience yourself with the game, you can tell she also gains much more confidence once you've cleared the game a few times. If the story is still not enough for you though, good almighty Chaos here brought out new challenge mode, where you essentially have to complete a level with a predefined build, which, depending on the difficulty, can put all winning cards in your hand, or on the contrary, drastically handicap you. It's not only meant to be a challenge, but also just a fun way to learn about the game. So the game is fun. Now how does it look? I think you can see for yourself. The environments are gorgeous, especially when you stop at these viewpoints that let you fully appreciate the landscape. And it's not just the visuals or the music. Even from a gameplay perspective, the main areas of the game are presented in a way that matches the setting. Take the Fields of Sorrow, the gloomy equivalent of Elysium from the first game. Instead of traversing through small arenas like you're used to, you're given this wide, empty field, haunted by wandering souls and feral beasts. You're surrounded by the sad, desperate sounds of pipe organs. The vines are obstructing your way, you have no idea where to go, and simply run aimlessly among the noxious clouds of the dead. The desolated city of Ephyra, another good example that might be one of my favorite areas so far. A central hub connected to the sprawling streets of the city. Again, very simple, but it's not a linear corridor, it actually looks like a city. There are so many details too. You can see broken statues of Hades and Persephone, the altars of Hermes have a little turtle, which is kind of funny. You meet Medea, who naturally is cooking up new inventive ways to poison people. And the boss of the area is Polyphemus, the Cyclops blinded by Odysseus. Or nobody, I should say.
Nobody played a dirty trick on me as Al.
And you've sought vengeance on this nobody ever since?
Oh, not me personally. Someday somebody's gonna get nobody for what he did.
There are of course plenty of references to Greek mythology, but it's still stuff like this where technically they didn't need to put it, that goes to show how much polish was put into the game. Another example, Tartarus, now being the domain of Kronos, is riddled with clocks and other mechanical engines, which are constantly ticking in the music. The melody itself is also a direct homage to the first game, which nicely ties everything together. Oh yeah, I didn't mention the story, did I? In Hades 2, Grandpa Kronos has taken over the House of Hades and is currently waging war against Olympus, which is why you, the player, have to go fight his armies both in the underworld and the surface, which means we have not one, but two final bosses. Now they are tough, especially Kronos, but at the end of the day, just like any other boss of a game, once you figure them out, they're not unbeatable. Kronos does have a lot of health, most of his attacks are nicely telegraphed, but he can be a bit too fast for the damage that he has. The arena you fight him in is incredibly cramped, and he not only summons minions but also barriers that will continuously shield all nearby enemies from damage, until they're broken. Of course he has two phases, the first one is bearable, although the last quarter of his first health bar can get very hectic, if you don't get rid of everything he summons very quickly. For his second phase, he will teleport you on a giant clock dial. He will occasionally darken the entire screen with only one brightly lit safe spot, and will one-hit kill you if you're out of battles. Given how often he surrounds himself with time-freezing auras or rotating orbs, it is somewhat fortunate that all weapons at least have one ranged attack to still get to him, but it can be a bit frustrating to have him sit at the center with all the extra enemies and crazy effects that protect him. A very nice detail that you might have seen already is that he will unpause your game if you try to open up the menu, which is hilarious. You actually need a special incantation to prevent him from doing that. But in the end, he will fall, if only momentarily, for time cannot be stopped, until they patch that in. The second final boss, for now at least, is Eris, the impersonation of Strife. Her character is the polar opposite of Melinoe. She couldn't care less about the stakes of a story and only does as she pleases, so she's naturally set up to be Melinoe's rival, and I really like how this sense of rivalry also engages the player in some way. She appears after you've beaten the first boss, and will handicap you by gradually increasing the damage you take one fight after the other. Luckily this only applies to your current run, and she will only curse you one more time later once you've beaten the second boss. What I find kind of funny about this is that if she didn't curse you and was simply mean to Melinoe in her dialogue, you wouldn't really care. But the fact that she drastically increases the odds of you failing affects you more effectively than any other story-driven reason. So it wasn't surprising to face her again later as a boss fight, to get some payback and even out the score. It's a very satisfying fight, and I won't lie, I was quite happy to see the Adamant Trail again, even though I was the one being shot at. If you played the first game, the mechanics of her fight should look familiar. She will rain down bombs on you and increase her own damage by absorbing the impact of the explosions. She will also fire at you with both long-range and short-range volleys of bullets. But as long as you keep moving or take cover behind the two destructible pillars, you should be fine. The third area of the surface should arrive later this year, and I can't wait to see who the next boss is gonna be, but I can't help but wonder what happened to Zagreus. We do see him in a flashback trapped with the others, but Kronos mentions that Zagreus couldn't resist him, so I'm not sure if that implies he will face Zagreus as a boss, but I would absolutely love that. We do see some of the previous infernal arms like the Stygian Blade, currently under Nemesis possession, and the Adamant Trail of Eris, so it would be a nice callback to have Zagreus wield his father's spear, or see him in some sort of time loop while he's still trying to escape the underworld. Either way, the next update couldn't come any sooner. For now, we'll literally just have to kill time until the actual release of a game. There are a few other titles we've been waiting for. I don't want to give names or anything. I feel like if I do, we're not gonna get any news until the next 500 years or something, so you know. Oh yeah, there's Wilds too.